Baldur's Gate 3 has completely blew my mind, and I was not expecting that at all. So I just got done playing Baldur's Gate 3 for the second time through. In total, I've been playing, I think on my PlayStation, it's around about 260 hours in total. The first playthrough I did all on my own, which took about 160 hours. And then the second playthrough I did it with my friend, and that took about 100 hours. And I just can't believe that I actually spent that much time playing Baldur's Gate 3 when I was certain I was not going to enjoy it at all. How wrong was I? I actually enjoy this game that much, and I played it that much that even my friend Easy T, who I play games with all the time here on the channel, messaged me saying, wAFF, I've never ever seen you play a game this much ever. Because like I was waking up at like 7 AM, which is early for me. I usually would wake up around 7, 8 naturally and go straight back asleep and just not wake up till midday. That's usually what I'm like. But I was waking up at like 7 AM, wide awake with excitement to get on Baldur's Gate, and I'd come and sit here in this room and I'd spend like all day. I was doing like 12 hours a day on Baldur's Gate. I needed to play it. I needed to get through the story. I just basically didn't think I was going to enjoy this because of the turn-based combat, and it just seemed boring to me. Like, I've played one game before in my life which was turn-based, and I think that was Final Fantasy VII, maybe, when I was a lot younger. And it was turn-based, but back then it was like turn-based game was like probably the best type of combat. Now we have like God of War and Elden Ring and all the Souls games, as well as like thousands of other games where, you know, you have to be skilled with your combat. You know, you can parry, you can dodge roll, it's all timed. You can use all these different attacks and different combos. You know, like that's the type of gameplay that I've come to absolutely love. So going to play a turn-based game for me felt like, oh, this is going to be boring. And again, I was completely wrong. Like, I absolutely loved the turn-based combat. It's become one of my favorite ways to play games. I just really enjoyed everything about it. The different abilities that you could have, the actual amount of abilities that you could have was crazy to me. All the characters just had their own abilities. You know, I was a paladin, so I just liked going in with my sword and just being on the front line, beating the shit out of everybody. But then I'd always keep Gale at the back, and Gale would just cast all these really powerful spells. Shadowheart had like some decent spells, but she would become like my healer. And then Lae'zel was another character that I had mainly in my group, who was always just like in there with me, kicking the shit out of everybody. I did use Karlach a little bit. I barely used Astarion. I used Will a little bit more than the others. Well, more than Astarion and Karlach, just because Will has quite a lot of his story like to explore in Act 3. So I did actually use him a little bit more, but my main characters were Shadowheart, Gale, and Lae'zel. And yeah, just the amount of different abilities you can choose. I love the fact that you could just in mid-game just find scrolls, so everyone could use abilities, even if you aren't like a sorcerer or a wizard. But then Gale, you could go into his settings and you could learn new abilities and new spells and then use them and switch them around. Like, it just, the freedom of all this was just so exciting. But just all the dialogue options and everything that you could choose to do in this game just blew me away. Like, straight away, as soon as I started playing this game, I was sold within the first like 30 minutes, because I had no idea that this game was anything to do with Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't know anything about Dungeons and Dragons before I played this, which is another thing that I'm happy about from playing this game, is that now I actually appreciate Dungeons and Dragons, and the lore behind it and the world building's like insane to me. So just that was one thing I didn't realize. But then the story was so, I just didn't realize that the game was going to be about some weird octopus things called elithids that put a tadpole in your brain, and then you and your party just need to go and figure out how to get it out of your brain and find a cure. It took me by surprise. I didn't know what to expect. But once I seen this, I was so intrigued as to like where the story was going to go. I really wanted to know, like, what were these illithid things? Like, what is going on? Are we going to get this cure? What happens if we don't get the cure? It was just so interesting right from the beginning to me. And then like very early on, like in the first like 10 minutes, I met this little creature that was a brain on the Illithid ship, and it has these legs, and it became like a friend of mine. But my friend I was screen sharing the game at the time to my friend Easy T, and he told me that he had the opposite thing happen. And I was like, oh, what? So this thing doesn't actually become your friend if you choose a different dialogue option? He was like, no, I never had that. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Then we're walking through the ship and we come across Shadowheart, where I probably would have just walked past her or left her or probably just killed her. I don't know what I would have chosen, but I managed to save her because my friend told me, like, mate, she's actually a really important character. Try and get her in your group. So I got Shadowheart. We progressed through, came to this big fight where it was like the first sort of like main fight that happens in the game, where the Illithid captain of the ship is fighting this like demon-winged devil guy. This devil guy's got a huge fire sword. Now, I would have just completely missed this and probably just tried to fight the guy and got killed over and over again, because I know it's quite difficult to defeat him straight away, because I did try that on my second playthrough and it was difficult. But I would have just either tried that over and over again and given up, or just tried to escape, which you can do. But then my friend told me, look, if you get Shadowheart and you cast command onto the demon guy who's got the sword, that sword is actually one of the best swords in the game really early on. So do that, cast the sword, get it, and just get out of there. So I did that straight away, managed to get the sword, get off the ship, and then we crash land and like my character falls down and nearly hits the ground. Somehow something saves him, and then we go off and start our adventure. But I was just loving the fact that we had this sick sword and I could have completely missed it. I could have missed Shadowheart. Like, there's so many things that I could have just missed, and I straight away was like, okay, I'm gonna love this game, because it felt like for the first time ever in a game that there was actual consequences to your actions. I just felt like that a lot of games trying to give you that feeling. Cyberpunk did that. It felt like it gave you the feeling that your decision will matter, but then ultimately it probably doesn't. Where straight away in this game I was like, oh shit, like everything matters. Like everything I choose to do has a consequence on my story and the world and the game and like the outcome to everything. That I really enjoyed these moments. Like every time I had to roll a dice and try and land on a number that I really wanted to try and succeed on a certain dialogue option that I felt was important, and getting that and the feeling of excitement of like, yes, I actually got what I wanted. But then sometimes you get the opposite and be like, no shit, where's this gonna lead to? That feeling was, I haven't had that in a game before. I haven't had that feeling when making decisions or making dialogue options that I actually really cared about what was gonna happen next, and that if it doesn't happen the way I want it to, then it's going to have drastic changes to certain characters, which it does, or to your character, or to the story. And all the way through this game, it was like that. So that feeling of excitement and like anticipation and like fear almost of like what could happen if you don't get it right, I had that constantly all the way through the game. And I haven't experienced that, and that was something that I really, really found amazing about this, that I just was so interested and so invested in every single character and every conversation, because I felt it was important to listen and to care about it so that I could actually get the story that I was wanting to get. And yeah, just even the dice roll was such an amazing little thing that I've never experienced as well. The game just has so many mechanics and so many things I haven't experienced before in a game that it just felt so exciting to me. And I just, yeah, like the whole way through this game, I loved every moment of it. All the characters in this game were just really well made, well written, well fleshed out, well acted. I just couldn't believe that each character, you could literally just kill them, miss them completely. You could just choose not to have them in your party and just have no dialogue really ever with them. Like Astarion, I barely used, and then I seen that the guy who played Astarion won the award for the best actor. I was like, what? How? I've never even used him. I just couldn't believe that. And that's another thing that I was like blown away by, that just the amount of freedom you have in this game to play it how you want it is just like, I've never experienced a game like it. But one thing I just really, really liked was just how much detail were put into the storylines of each character, and that you could go at one point you can just keep going into their stories and completing their quests, and each one of their quests is just so exciting and so interesting. I loved all their stories. Shadowheart's story with Shah was so interesting. Astarion's quest line where you have to go to the vampire, I can't remember the guy's name, but that whole storyline in Act 3, I think it's called the Pale Elf, was just so good. Like, I loved that. And I loved it because I wasn't using Astarion. I just went and selected him, and I went through my list of missions in my journal, and I was like, okay, Pale Elf, Astarian's questline. Okay, I'm going to go and do that. And I was like, this is absolutely sick. Gale's questline, I don't think I actually completed that fully because there was a moment where I realized, I think I actually looked online because I can't remember why, but there was moments in this game where I'd look online because I knew certain things were going to happen, and I really didn't want certain things to happen because I really wanted to keep Gale in my party. And I remember reading something that if you went to see Mistra, that you would lose Gale for good. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that because I want Gale in my party. So there were certain things that I maybe didn't fully complete, but on my actual to-do list, like my journal, I did every single thing apart from maybe 2 or 3. Karlach was an amazing character. I loved her. I thought she was such a well-written character. I felt so sad for her. Like, I actually teared up at the end of the game just because, just for the stuff that happened. I don't want to spoil it in case you haven't played the game or you have played it and you haven't seen certain things. But just like Karlach's story, obviously it's all about, you know, she's been down in Avernus and she's basically been there for like, I can't remember how many years it was. Was it 10 years or was it 100 years? Either way, she was trapped in Avernus and she manages to get out, but she's been sort of given this heart that's like a fire, an infernal engine that's basically gonna kill her. So you have to go through the game and try and find different infernal iron to help build her a better heart so she doesn't blow up or overheat. You know, her storyline was so interesting and I really liked her as a character. Thought Will's story was so interesting as well. I barely used him as well, but just there's things that happen with Will, especially towards the end of the game. Obviously, a lot of stuff happens with Mistra. It's just so interesting. There's so much to do in this game that I could be sat here for hours and go into everything. But yeah, every character was so interesting. I loved all the storylines. I loved the game's story as a whole. The amount of different characters you come across in the world, the different outcomes you can have, just how you can go to one mission and it can venture off into a whole nother storyline. It take you hours and hours to suddenly get back onto the main mission that you was on. Yeah, it's just so much to this game. Now, just going back to combat, some of the fights that you experience in this game gave me the same amount of adrenaline and thrill and excitement that I would get from fighting an Elden Ring boss. So when you defeat any of the Souls-like bosses and it takes you ages and you eventually complete it and you're just like, yes! That feeling of like, I've just completed it, it took me ages. That exact feeling. I actually got that with a lot of the fights in the main boss fights anyway in Baldur's Gate 3, and I wasn't expecting that because I didn't think I would be that thrilled by the fights because it's turn-based. You know, it doesn't feel like it's just so action-packed that you're really trying to dodge at the right time. That feeling you get in the Souls-like games or God of War, whatever, the games that I love playing. I didn't expect to get that from Baldur's Gate 3, but I really did in specific fights. In particular, Raphael. The Raphael fight in the House of Hope in Act 3 took me, I'm not even joking, that whole mission took me about 10 hours. It took me about 10 hours. Just because I just took so long to get through it. I really was like trying to do everything right. And then I got to Raphael. I mean, the actual mission itself didn't take 10 hours, but Raphael took me hours and hours and hours. Like, it took me a good, 2 days of just trying it over and over and over again. I don't know why it took me so long. I was playing on balanced difficulty, so it wasn't even on hard, but it took me forever. And the feeling that I got, I wish I recorded my gameplay, because when I completed that boss fight, I was literally jumping up and down. I was so happy because I couldn't believe it took me so long. I was sat there all day just doing it over and over again. And the music that came into that boss fight, it totally blew me away. I've listened to it a million times since. I absolutely loved it. It just felt so, I don't know what the right word, it was just so exciting. And with that song that's placed over it, where there's Raphael singing and there's that woman's amazing voice and all the orchestral organs, and then trying to defeat Raphael and just failing over and over and over again, I don't know, it just really was an amazing experience that I'll never forget. It was one of my most favorite gaming experiences, with a boss fight, definitely. And wow, that took me so long. But so many other boss fights took so long as well. Not as long as Raphael. But yeah, I loved the challenge in the game as well. It didn't feel like it was easy. A lot of the game felt like it was quite hard, especially towards the end. The mission where you go down and you save Will's father and you have to do this rescue mission. I did that so much because I really wanted to rescue everyone. Don't think it really matters, but just from my experience, I really wanted to do that. I wanted to see if I could actually do it. I think I managed to get every single person apart from one. Every time I managed to get everyone but just one person. So I didn't get to do that fully, but I loved that. That was like a really interesting little side mission that you could have completely missed. The boss fight with Orin was really, really cool. She kidnapped Lae'zel, and this was one thing that I had to keep sort of like trying to avoid. I kept loading it up because I didn't want to have Lae'zel taken because I didn't know where that led. And I did read online at one point that basically there was a timer, and that if you don't capture or free or rescue, sorry, Lae'zel or whatever character it is that Orin has kidnapped, then you will actually lose that character. And I was so invested in the Githyanki questline with Lae'zel and Morpheus. Orpheus, who was obviously captured in the astral prism. I really wanted Lae'zel to be there when we came up to that moment, so I kept loading it up to make sure, but then Orin would just keep appearing around Act 3 as Lae'zel, and I was like, for fuck's sake, how do I prevent this from happening? Eventually I did. I managed to keep Lae'zel in my party, and then Orin kidnapped like this little girl that I rescued, which was really interesting because I think we managed to eat her cat. Something happened with eating her cat, and she got kidnapped, and we rescued her as well. But there were just so many amazing moments. I could keep going on, but the whole game was just unbelievable. And then the end of the game, I couldn't believe how long the game took to complete. I thought I was at the end multiple times, and it just wasn't. And eventually you go up onto the Absolute's brain, well, the Never Brain or whatever it's called, and then you get to the top, and you have to try and get the Emperor to go and cast this spell on the crown, which takes a full turn, but there's about 1 million enemies that have to take a turn, and if the Emperor gets knocked out of concentration, then you have to start the whole process again. Fuck me, this took me ages, like ages. Again, it took me hours and hours and hours. Eventually I did it, and it was just an amazing feeling. But as soon as you do that, I thought, that's it, that's the end, it's got to be the end. And then it wasn't. Suddenly I'm in this, like, inside this other area where you have all these platforms and you have to defeat the brain, but then all the platforms fall. I remember getting in there finally and being like, yes, I've done it. Oh wait, hang on a minute, I'm still stuck in, alright, just defeat the brain, and then all the platforms collapse and everyone dies. And then you just got to do it all again. It was so stressful, but just so rewarding when you complete it. And yeah, just the whole game felt like that for me. It just felt like really challenging at points, and the feeling of when I would complete these missions were just so good. I just love this game. This game is just a must-buy. Like, it's definitely my game of the year. I could spend all day talking about it. There's so much that I would love to go into that I'm definitely skipping and missing. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about Baldur's Gate 3 and just give my thoughts on it, and just say, like, this is one of the best games I've ever played. It's up there with my favorite games. I will definitely play it again. I want to play it again for the 3rd time and just do everything as like an asshole. I just want to be a bad bastard and go through, kill everyone, make all like the worst decisions, not the worst decisions, but just be like an asshole all the way through it, and just don't be nice at all. So I probably will do that again. I'm thinking about doing a live stream and just playing through Baldur's Gate 3 for the 3rd time. But I'm going to wait a little bit because I have just pretty much spent nearly 300 hours playing this game. But yeah, that's my thought on Baldur's Gate 3. And for me, if I was to rate this game, I would give it a massive 10 out of 10. What do you guys think? Have you played Baldur's Gate 3 or not? I'd love to know your thoughts down below. Is it a game that you'd be interested in? Have you played it? Is it something that you don't think you'd enjoy? Let me know down below. Drop me a like if you enjoyed my review, thoughts, whatever I've just spoken on this game. And also, if you are new here, then hit that subscribe button. That'd be amazing for me. Thanks again, guys, and I'll see you all on the next one.